Welcome to F1 Casuals. For the new fan, we welcome you. For the returning fans, you know us as the Late Breakers, and we are back after a year and I think 3-month hiatus, bringing it rebranded F1 Casuals, a bit more, I don't know, fan friendly, fam friendly, something like that. Greg, Mike, I'm happy to be back with you guys. Mike's in the studio with me in Halifax. He's in from Truro, no longer out there. Greg's still killing it over there in Portland, Oregon, and we got him via the internet. And I'm just happy to be back in the studio with you guys.
Very happy to be back, back on the grid per se with you boys, and great to be back with all of you listening and joining in. We're very excited for this season. Going to be a lot of action on track and of course off track here with the Casual Boys as always. So looking forward to a great year with you guys.
Guys, it's my distinct honor and privilege to be back recording with you. Wish I was in the studio out in Halley, but doing this with a 4-hour time difference and a couple thousand miles in between, but couldn't be happier to be back chatting F1 with the boys.
And we're making it happen. I think actually the sole reason that we stopped recording the Late Breakers is because we tried to sing for our lovely boy Fernando, and it was it was a disaster via Zoom. We just couldn't find the right pitch, the right timing, and we called it quits right there. But I think just maybe, and I know we're gonna go over that race, and it's not gonna be a happy song, but I think just maybe we're gonna have to serenade Fernando again later in the episode. But you know what? It's been a year and 3 months off, as we said. So, Mike, I'm giving you about 30, 40 seconds here. Catch us up. What happened with F1 in that time?
Well, aside from Red Bull winning the Team World Championship and Max taking home the drivers.
Oh, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's their time, and as we've seen already this season, they're on another planet. But so the biggest change from 2021 up until now, I guess, would be the changes in the regulations for the liveries or the cars themselves. And from an aerodynamic perspective, that's simply that. Predominantly in previous years, it's been downforce has come from aero on top, the wings, the rear, and front. Now the downforce is actually drawn from the floor. And what this has resulted in is less turbulent wake from the cars, and they're able to follow each other closer, which has created a lot more passing. And also, like we're seeing in gaps during race times, qualifying times, 1 second gap between 10 to 15, and sometimes the entire grid, 1 second, gap there. So big
lot
change.
Closer.
Yeah.
And you said that pre-show. That's really the big change. We wanted better racing. Big old Liberty Media said, we want to make it more exciting. Let's get them to race closer like they did back in the old days.
Yeah, and we're seeing that now.
We're seeing it now. Like you said, I mean, so close all the way across the grid. Obviously, Red Bull's in another world right now, but it's great to see it. And the past two races, obviously Bahrain, we didn't really cover, but even with Saudi Arabia today, some great racing that we're excited to get into. And you know what? Let's not wait any further. Let's get into the Saudi Arabian GP. All right, so a couple storylines going into the second Grand Prix of this season, and the biggest one of all, and just the best thing that could happen to us, I think, is the emergence of Aston Martin, and of course, the newest member of the Aston Martin racing team, Fernando Alonso. Our boy. They are fast, like maybe second, probably third fastest on the grid, but wow. Fernando with a podium, Lance with the broken wrists, with I believe is a 6th place finish. Should have had him on my fantasy team. Whoops. Amazing. And going into this race, high expectations already for that team.
And then especially with it being very fast in the practice sessions leading up to qualifying. Yeah, very impressive from Aston Martin this year already.
Absolutely. And then the other end of that, McLaren in shambles. I don't understand that at all. Zach Brown, no answers really coming out of that camp. I mean, it's sad because Lando is just a wasted talent right now.
And then you have Oscar Piastri, new to the grid this year, pushing him. And what a kind of awful way to start your F1 career with McLaren in absolute shambles, as you say, Mark. Yeah, got a long way to go.
It's not great. It's funny. You think, a couple new a few new drivers on the grid, and you think the McLaren seat was the most prestigious, and it's looking quite the opposite. And Ferrari, I mean, the woes. continue. Yeah. Charles obviously out of the race last week and now faced with a 10-place grid penalty, had to replace the control electronic system on that power unit. Really unfortunate there. I mean, poor guy. He's got a lot of patience for that team. I mean, I think with Ferrari, you give them as much leeway as you can, but geez.
Yeah, it's tough. Got to be frustrating, especially with a lot of momentum built last year. Just in regards to that electronics controller, that is their third of the year, so they're maxed out. If this issue persists throughout the season, Charles and Ferrari will incur more grid penalties as well.
Third of the year, first race of the year.
Yeah, so
yikes.
That's a horrific start, and I think you could hear Charles's frustration on the radio a few times today. He's kind of dialed it in a little bit relative to what we would have heard on Drive to Survive Season 5, which I'm sure we'll get into at various points this season. But yeah, definitely an alarming start for Ferrari fans.
Absolutely. And, we can't get into this race without, of course, touching on the former champions of the world and dominance of F1, Mercedes. I just got a quick bone to pick with them before we get into the race. All right. We've got Toto putting out like this heartfelt apology in the press, like to the fans, letter to the fans. We're so sorry. It's like, listen, guys, chill out. It's not that bad. You had George end up on the podium, and that's another storyline later on. But it's, I get, and Mike, I brought this up earlier, and you were like, hey, listen, they won 8 years? Yeah. They won 8 years in a row. The expectations are they're the best on the grid every year, but you can't be the best forever. So just, it's okay.
Yeah, Mercedes is definitely going through a low point right now. They've lost a lot of senior staff within the technical departments and development of that car. So, it kind of makes sense that the performance is woeful at best at this moment. But the drivers are staying positive. George, again, solid P4 and held Lewis at bay through the closing laps, and then gets a podium due to what we saw in the race, which we'll get into, obviously. But I think it's coming along better. It's not as significant or shocking maybe right now as it was a couple days ago when after Bahrain and into Jeddah. But long season ahead of us. Other teams are going to continue to develop and get faster. So I don't really foresee Mercedes making too much of a charge for the championship this year, unfortunately. And what's going to happen with Lewis, right? Because he commands a championship competitive car. So
he does, and I mean they're going to be lucky to finish in the top 3. They might finish 4th. And with Lewis, his trainer Angela has officially moved on. Not really sure what her new job is, but I think she did a lot of stuff for him behind the scenes and in front of the scenes too. And that's an important key, I think, to his. Athletes are so ritualistic. Important key to his ritual, and we'll see if that kind of affects him throughout the rest
Speculation
of the year.
And word out of Lewis's camp is that it was Lewis who initiated Angela's departure.
Really?
Yeah.
You heard it not here first, but you heard it maybe here first. That's interesting.
When things aren't going so well and you need to switch again. Circling back to what you said about being ritualistic, maybe sometimes you need to break that to get some positive things going, and a better result today than in race 1. So maybe it's going to work. But no, Mercedes have bigger problems than Lewis's trainer at the moment. So.
Yeah, it's true. I think back to actually the final year before the the change in livery and car and everything. When Red Bull did end up winning on the last lap, a lot of controversy there. We're not going to get into it. But Mercedes, halfway through that year, decided to kind of turn back and focus on that car again instead of putting more focus on the new livery for 2022. And you wonder if that is still maybe kind of biting him in the butt. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So qualifying, of course, the biggest storyline, Max not getting out of Q2, some failure with the drive shaft, and he started P14. Very unfortunate, but I mean, with Max, it's like he's somehow going to be fine. He's going to make his way, charge through the GP or charge through the Saudi Arabian track, although, it's a tough one to pass on, but of course he managed. And Alonso with a strong P3, which ended up on the front of the grid because of Charles Leclerc's grid penalty because he qualified in second. And Perez taking pole. Good for him. He actually took pole last year too.
Yeah.
So let's get into the race. It is Jeddah, of course, the circuit in Saudi Arabia. It is compared to a roller coaster with never-ending S turns. It's actually counterclockwise compared to most of the tracks on the circuit going clockwise. It's got to be hard on them, just pulling those G's on the S turns, like insane. But let's get into it. Fernando with a great start right off the bat. He pushes Perez to the side and takes first place. And Greg, you texted the group chat. You were singing. You were ready to go. And I think literally 2 seconds after that, news came. Word got out that Fernando lined up improperly on the grid, way off to the left, more than a tire.
Yeah, shocking. Much more so than Ocon the week previous.
Yeah, and that's an automatic 5-second penalty that he would serve later, taking his first pit stop. But that really blew the wind out of my sails.
Yeah,
me too.
All three of us.
I was gutted. Like we're all, if you haven't caught on yet, listeners, we're all Aston Martin fans here. We're supporting them heavily.
Yeah.
And we all felt the pain.
Yeah, unfortunate. Oh, look at
What do we see there? What do you got there, Gregor? Show the world, buddy. There you go.
Ooh,
That's my allegiances.
That's real nice. Show that bring that out for the episode. Is it cold over there?
Right, I know. Why?
You got the heat down?
What were you saving it for? You wearing it?
I was going to save it just for the outrage over what happened later in the race, which we're going to get to. But I think
we messed up the big reveal.
Hey man, we can cue it back. Put that jacket back on.
In fact, this little banter is great. I love this.
All right,
and that's tough because you're racing against the Red Bulls, and as everyone knows at this point, that car is just so much better than the rest of the grid. Reliability issues aside. So you get that 5-second penalty right off the bat, and then it's like, well, there's no way you're going to compete. And I mean, realistically, they weren't competing with Red Bull, even if they didn't have that 5-second penalty. But that means you've got the Mercedes and the Ferraris right behind, and it wasn't looking good. And on the fourth lap, Perez took that lead, even though he had a lockup. Oh, very nice.
Yeah, we were watching that.
Yeah. And then, boys, we're like, just getting over this 5-second penalty, and all of a sudden, stop the car, Lance, stop the car.
Yeah. Brake failure. Yeah. Devastating.
Devastating. We're at a loss of words here because we're like, we have such high expectations now. It's so funny. After one race, we're like, yeah, Aston Martin should be finishing second. What are we talking about here? Actually, it's just my fantasy team I'm pissed about. I got all three, Car, Lance, and
all in,
and Fernando on the team. But yeah, had to pull off to the well, he didn't get fully off the track. That's why we had that yellow flag. But brake failure, I guess even at the start of the race, they spotted that they were smoking and it wasn't looking good from the get-go.
Yeah, that's disappointing, obviously, when you see the lap times that they're putting in practice and qualifying the last 2 weekends. Expectations are high, and rightfully so. And Lance, especially this weekend, keeping pace with Fernando right up until the race started. So really disappointing for him, I'm sure. He was pretty quiet on the radio, and for me, that's a tell.
Yeah, much closer to the gap that we saw in Bahrain. Like it was all Alonso last week, and then nice to see Lance catching up. And I mean, yeah, they were on for a double points finish in Saudi, which is going to be huge, consistent points for them to finish much higher up in the constructors this year.
Yeah,
so,
it's
disappointing.
Very disappointing. Yeah. Seems like his wrists are healed, and he was fixing to be in the top 10. Get some great points for Aston. We won't stick on it too much. We're obviously upset about it, but we'll move on. Lance out, but Fernando's still up there. He's still battling. We thought he actually almost missed that pit stop opportunity during the yellow flag, but he still ended up ahead of George, who was in P3 behind him.
And then we have on the other side of the equation, Ferrari, who cannot get out of their own way, it seems.
Still.
Yeah. Struggles continue on the pit wall.
I mean, they got Mateus. out of there,
Matteo
Binotto.
Binotto.
And we thought the clown show may have ended with him, and maybe we were giving him too much credit.
He's an engineer.
He's
man.
an engineer.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring in Fred Vasseur, the heir from Alfa Romeo, and he's capable. Obviously,
Yeah, he's a
been in
racer.
F1 a long time, so you think, okay, maybe Ferrari can kind of clean up their act and have a real leader at the helm, but still problems. Messes up the pit strategy. Messed up Charles, who was charging along with Verstappen, of course, and unfortunate to see that continue to happen. I mean, it's every race, and we have to say it like we're surprised that it's every race. But when does legacy not really come into the equation? Like, how many years does this have to happen before
We're getting pretty
Ferrari-
close.
Yeah,
yeah, I'd say we're getting pretty close, especially with the talent that they have there in Carlos and Charles.
Yeah.
6th and 7th isn't good enough, and we're seeing consistent reliability issues now, and on top of consistent strategic reliability issues, you could say. Charles was could have pipped. He could have been up there. He could have had a podium today. Combination of poor strategy, poor pit call, maybe the wrong tire choice. But
all the above,
Yeah.
typically for them. And even think about how they started last year with them looking to have the best car on the grid, and then how it ended up. It's disappointing. I guess could be worse, boys. We could be Ferrari fans.
Yeah, I'd like to see them. We all want to see Ferrari up there competing for podiums and whatnot. It's exciting to see that red car. But it's definitely Red Bull's time at the moment.
Yeah, sure was.
It's just such a mixed bag of errors. It's like you can't predict what it's going to be week to week, and that's I think what's ultimately the most frustrating thing for the Tifosi.
Yeah, exciting for us though.
Oh yeah. That's funny.
What's going to happen
right?
next?
It is such a mixed bag. You can't even point to one department or one part of the car. It's everything, and I have no answers for them, of course, because I am not a mechanic or an engineer or any of that stuff. So we're going to revisit, of course, that Fernando pit stop, because initially, and the way I just set that up, we didn't think anything was wrong. In fact, it looked like after that 5 seconds, quick pit stop, 2.7 seconds, got out of there in 7.7. Not bad at all. But Mike, you kind of saw something.
The whole time, as soon as he pulled into the box, his team got very close to the car, which is standard, right? They're there, and I was just saying to you. I mean, I said it to you verbally. I was like, "Do not touch the car. Do not touch the car." Obviously, watching the debacle with Ocon and Alpine last week, 2 weeks ago in Bahrain, I feared the worst for Alonso, and of course, they were confirmed. The rear jackman was positioned to lift the car, but actually made contact with his jack point, which you're not allowed to do while serving a 5-second penalty. So essentially, for those of you who are unfamiliar, if you incur a time penalty on track and you have to make a pit stop before the end of the race, you have to remain in the box with the car not being serviced or touched for that amount of time that the penalty is before they can work on the car. So the team made contact with his vehicle before that 5 seconds was up, and therefore they incur another penalty. Very, very frustrating.
Oh, and we'll revisit it at the end of the race, because it wasn't confirmed until, race was over and done with. It was 25 minutes later. We were setting up for the recording in here, and all of a sudden we hear, oh, no, reviews are in. That car jack did touch the back of Alonso's car, and it's a 10-second penalty.
Yeah.
So 15 total, 15 seconds that just didn't need to happen at all. And that would play a serious part in where Alonso finished at the end of the race.
Yeah, major, major impact.
Very, very unfortunate.
I guess the good news for Aston Martin, though, these are very fixable errors and early in the season. So if this stuff is going to happen, might as well be race 2 when the car is cooking. So I back them to kind of figure this stuff out early. And like Mike had alluded to earlier in the episode, we're going to see strong points finishes from this team, I think, throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But at the same time, these are points that they need right now, because the other teams, like the Ferraris, maybe the McLarens, probably not the Mercedes, they're going to figure it out too. you would assume. So, I mean, we'll see. I think they still have one of the fastest cars on the grid, and that won't change. I mean, that obviously is due to them hiring some former Red Bull and Mercedes team members. That's the way to go. Great strategy. Makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to compete all year long. There's no doubt about that. Some hilarious team radio from Russell, our boy, Georgie, on lap 29. They were telling him Lewis is a bit faster than you. I mean, he was on the mediums, and you should probably get out of the way. And he was kind of battling Alonso, and he was like, he's still got to take his 5-second penalty, and he already had. And we got a nice little F-bomb from Georgie.
Yeah, news to George there. I believe the gap was about like 7 seconds at the time. Lewis was closing in. He was under 2 seconds. So, yeah. Shock of the world to George, that's for sure.
I'm going to be honest with you. I like George Russell a lot more when he was on Williams.
I agree.
You said that before the show.
I agree.
Elaborate, Mark.
Okay, he got way more British, first of all, if you know what I'm saying.
We haven't even talked about the power pose in the driver intro.
Oh, my gosh.
It's become widely memed.
The highly memeable wide door frame pose from George.
I thought Spider-Man wore like blue and red, not black.
Hey, turn upside down too.
Right.
It's hilarious. I don't know. He just kind of, I don't want to say pompous, but there's an air about him. I could say it, right?
Yeah. He complains a lot. If I was Toto, I'd be saying, mate, put your head down and get on with it.
Yeah,
we don't need all the crying on the radio. We've got bigger problems, and let's focus on getting results.
Exactly. And I mean, the egos are there for everyone. There's no question all these guys want to win, but at the same time, like he whine. Like, everyone whines. Max whines, Lewis whines, but he whines about stuff that it's like, get out of here. Like, on to the next thing here. This is pointless. Focus on the race. And he did, and he actually ended up finishing in a very nice spot. So a lot of question marks when we started the race, but after that yellow flag, when you had Red Bull head to that 1-2, they were gone. They were both 15 seconds ahead.
Yeah, Max crushed it today. Like let's not ignore that. Like he made his way through the field. I think he passed Lewis in P7.
I think it was P9. P8, something like that.
Lap 12.
Made it look super easy.
Yeah. Oh, did he ever? Yeah. That was kind of depressing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, just Red Bull's on another planet. But Christian Horner, in his post-race interview stated that Perez had Max on pace today. So that's even scarier. The fact that, they're qualifying 1 and 2 handily, and now that quality pace is also recognized in race pace.
Yeah.
Is it too early to say after race 2 that it's their championship to lose yet? Like,
oh no,
scary.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It was their championship to lose before the first race,
preseason testing.
Yeah, the preseason testing.
Yeah.
But it was Sergio Perez with the pace over Max, the other Red Bull, because Max got into P2 and he didn't even get anywhere close to Sergio. And I think Serge finished a good 6-7 seconds ahead of Max to take his second Saudi Arabian GP in 2 years, back to back.
Congratulations, Checo. Is that his last race victory? Would have been last year, I guess. So wire to wire.
Yikes.
Quali 1, P1, finish P1. Not a second driver. Like he's contributing when Max is falling short, and resulting in P1 is exactly what Red Bull is looking for from him. There's been speculation about his seat already, and I think he's kind of cementing that.
Oh, yeah.
Good for him, and congratulations. Felicidad, Checo.
Back-to-back 1-2 finishes for Red Bull. I can't tell you the last time that happened, but it was a long time ago because their last 1-2 before last week was a few years ago. So Red Bull looking real good. McLaren, I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of this episode.
Oh, boy.
Whoo! They ended up 15th and 17th with Logan Sargent smudged in the middle there. And that's just so bad. You're the worst car on the grid right now.
It's absolutely unacceptable we're talking about legacy earlier. Probably, right up there, top 3 legacies in the sport. I mean, for me, and unfortunately, I kind of like the guy, but Zach Brown's name is potentially on the door in Velcro. Maybe a
Ooh.
spicy take. That's how I'm feeling. And I think that's, if this keeps up week after week, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that speculation at all. Yeah.
It's, I mean, obviously we all watched Drive to Survive, and the last few years you saw the resurgence of McLaren. You saw Lando Norris come in. He's been great, getting some podiums the last few years. Bring in Oscar Piastri, a fantastic young driver that some say, could
Great
have
signing.
Yeah, could have world championships in his future. You never know. And they roll out a car that should be in F2.
Yeah, it's let's just say it's a good thing Alonso's not with them anymore, because there would be some serious hot takes on the mic there on the driver radio. But no, it's frustrating for an organization of that magnitude, with that amount of money behind them, that amount of prestige and history, to be falling so short. But such is the gravity of Formula One, ever evolving. Keep up or get lost in the dust.
Yeah, I don't know what went wrong. It's they were keeping up and they were gaining, and then I mean, I guess they weren't great either last year.
Yeah,
the cost cap.
Yeah.
I think they didn't get things right with the new livery and the new car design, and that's unfortunate. You never know what's going to happen there.
And they've also managed to piss off every other team on the grid in the off season.
Yeah, no, support from other teams is one thing that actually does happen pretty frequently, whether that's through purchasing or not. Valuable information. Maybe people don't want to do business with Zach, and I also know
I miss this? What happened here?
Well, they don't make a lot of. They didn't make a lot of. Yeah, they don't. They didn't make a lot of friends with the whole Piastri thing.
Well, that's true.
The Alpine and Renault have significant history in the sport as well. But again, they carry a lot of. They are a selling company, so they provide. They're a manufacturer. They sell engines to other companies, right? Like we've seen with Red Bull in the past, whatever. Well, they also sell data. They sell software and whatnot. And maybe McLaren's, not being able to keep up because contracts aren't being renewed, things like that. Information isn't being exchanged. But ultimately, you have to look within. And, like we saw with Eric Boulier and McLaren in the past, if Zach doesn't live up, the press will apply pressure, and the board won't be able to take it, and we'll see a new CEO at.
Yep, and McLaren. Unlike Mr. Lawrence Stroll, Zach does not own the team. He does not call the shots.
Big difference.
And he could be gone,
point.
especially with that trust issue. I mean, if the other teams are not going to play ball, you got to tear it down from the top. And it's not going to be the owner, obviously. So
yeah, I mean, that's all speculation at best. Obviously, the issues have to be internal. And
listen, we're big on hot takes. Okay, gets us the real views. Okay, gosh, this guy.
Yeah, just covering my butt. But if things don't change quick on track results wise, changes will be made.
No question there. K-Mag in the points. Greg, you want to give him a little shout out there?
I just think this guy's been through so much, and to see him kind of slowly, steadily, without complaining. We're talking about guys complaining. This is a guy that just puts his head down and works, and is grateful to be on the grid and is demonstrating that with his performance.
Credit
Viking.
To him and
credit to Haas.
Yeah, a Viking performance.
Yeah, big Magnussen fan. Him and Grosjean being shown the door by Gunter in the past, and great to see him back and being competitive, and also putting aside his adversary, I guess, differences with his teammate, and strong showing from Hulkenberg today as well.
A couple good video clips of those too, if you want to go on YouTube.
Also a sneaky good race from Yuki Tsunoda. I just want to give him a quick shout out. They didn't do much to, trouble the pack, but I think Yuki's looking fast and looking confident, and that seems to have been the issue late in last season, is just, confidence, trust in his ability, and maybe being a little wild still, but I think he's looking a little bit more focused, and curious to see how far he can take the car this year.
Yeah, Greg, I'm glad you mentioned about Yuki. Actually, they put up a graphic pretty well into the race of most overtakes at that point. Max obviously in first, but Yuki in second. So yeah, I mean, he stormed through the field just like Max did. Obviously, not to a podium, but to a very nice P11.
11.
I think he was.
Or wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Just outside the points.
Yeah, he was just outside of the points.
To a
P11.
To a very nice P11, just outside the points, unfortunately, for him. So it's post-race. Sergio's got his win. Max, obviously, P2. And Fernando Alonso, well, he thinks he's celebrating his 100th podium in F1. But no.
Don't do this to me, Mark.
No.
Don't do this.
It happened because we already told you. We addressed it. That damn carjack was tapping on Fernando's behind, and that is just got to be one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. And that takes him off the podium, puts George Russell on the podium. Good for him, I guess. And it's heartbreak. And that really summed up the day for Aston Martin.
Yeah, very disappointing finish to a very promising overall weekend for Aston. Combined with Lance's DNF, and then to after trophies are handed out, post-race interviews, celebrations are underway, and the FIA steps in and says, actually, as we mentioned, your Jackman there was a little early on the gun, and that's going to incur a 10-second penalty, which is going to drop you back to P4. And
I can't believe they did that. They let
already
him
had the
celebrate.
graphic out.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, Aston Martin already celebrated online, and then
they were soaked
it
in
was off the mark.
champagne.
right? Yeah. Well, how do you put the champagne cork back in a bottle?
You don't.
You ask the
It's
FIA.
very difficult to do.
Devastating. And P4, I guess, fair enough.
Good point, but no podium for Alonso today, and which, as you said, would have been a century of podiums. So
Yeah, big moment. But obviously, with that car, Fernando will have another chance.
Australia
to
in
do
2
that.
weeks. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, another power circuit. So
What do you mean? Like fast?
yeah, it's just power circuit, I guess, would commonly be referred to a track. There's like 70-80% of the overall track you're on full power all the time. So we saw that Jeddah.
And that's why we call him the professor.
Love that.
A little knowledge here and there, sprinkle that out there for y'all. But yeah, so again, we'll see. We should see similar results in qualifying for sure, as we did Jeddah in Australia coming up in 2 weeks.
Right on, right on. All right, well, we're going to get into our final segment, which is the sprint to the finish line, because I decided that's what we're going to call it the other night.
That's great branding, Mark.
I try. There's probably a sprint race coming up, and we're just going to go rapid fire through a couple headlines that have been happening in F1 throughout the week, maybe throughout the past few weeks. But before we do that, Aston Martin, we can't say it enough. We love you, and we love you, Fernando. And we know you deserve that P3, and it got snatched away from you. But there's one thing that we can do for you.
Can you hear the drums, Fernando?
There was something in the air that night. The stars were bright. Fernando. Oh, we're going to make sure that's on point in post. Don't worry about it, folks.
Shaky, but a good effort overall, boys. And a fitting tribute to a man who's resurgent, resplendent. I don't even know what that means, but he looks happy, and he's going to be putting up major points this year. And I think that can make any Formula One fan excited about what's to come the next few races.
Absolutely. If you made up that word, deserving. If anyone deserves to have a word made up about him, it's Fernando Alonso. All right. Sprint to the finish line. Here we go. I'm not sure if you heard about this. Haas Automation, that owns Haas Racing, Gene Haas, looking at you. They've been accused of supplying the Russian army with processing computer stuff. So I don't know what that's all about. They've come out and denied it. It was a report from PBS. I know that that's not like fully F1 news, but that is not a great look for Haas, especially because, they had Nikita Mazepin. Love that. That's a Freudian slip there. Nikita Mazepin on the team, and the car was basically Mother Russia. And then obviously Russia invaded Ukraine, and they got rid of all that. And now to be accused of helping Russia behind the scenes, not great. Good news for the Austrian Grand Prix. They just signed a new deal on the calendar until 2027. And the Red Bull Ring's awesome, so I don't know why. Yeah, obviously they were going to re-sign that. No problem there. Cool little tidbit here I saw on Reddit. The London Collective's Docklands, they proposed a layout for a London street circuit.
You're getting me and Mikey excited.
I'm just sitting here buzzing, like even at the thought of a race in London. We need it. Greg, I know you're losing your mind over it too, like just speculation, everything, but we will be there. The casuals,
100%.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Count it. Yeah, I think obviously the history of the sport in the UK, the excitement around Silverstone every year, you add that into the mix. Yeah.
London.
Just make it back to back. 2 weeks smash.
Pandemonium.
Pandemonium.
Yeah.
Make it happen. Liberty Media, if you're listening, and I know you're not, make it happen. Got a funny quote here from Gunther Steiner. Obviously, fan favorite Mick, son of Michael Schumacher. He was given the boot from the Haas team, just couldn't do it, didn't perform well enough. He's been asked again, and he said, axing Mick Schumacher wasn't easy, but you can't beat a dead horse. And that's a terrible rendition of Gunther Steiner right there. You're very welcome. Williams, they are on record saying that Bahrain race doesn't change plans. Their focus is already on 2024, which is odd because they don't have that bad of a car on the grid this year.
They're also looking to sell. So,
looking to sell. There you go. So. We went over this earlier in the episode. Lewis Hamilton's, I put handler, trainer. Angela has left the building, no longer with Lewis. And news to me during the episode, apparently it was Lewis's doing.
Rumor has it.
Craziness.
I think that is going to be a pretty impactful decision one way or the other because, she is a prominent fixture. And if you watch any race week, like she's on camera a lot. She's with Lewis side by side frequently. And Lewis obviously has a pretty high, I think, priority on like the mental performance side of the equation. So, that could be a big shift for him. Hopefully it works out for Mercedes and for Lewis because we all know what he's chasing. History.
Yeah.
We'll see if it happens. So something that we did on the Late Breakers, race predictions. I mean, simple, easy. Who doesn't make race predictions? This isn't sponsored by Bet Online or Sport Interaction or whatever yet. Yeah, give us that betting money already, would you? But we're going to make some predictions for the Australian Grand Prix. And Mike, you're going to go first because I have no idea who I'm going to pick.
No problem, boys. I got this. It's Max wire to wire P1 qualifying. You'll never see him from after the first corner. Perez solid P2 and Alonso making up the podium on P3.
Love it. Greg, what are you thinking?
It's going to be very difficult until we see some progress made by the other key teams. Those are good predictions, Mike. I'm going to go off the board because somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it.
Another Late Breakers tradition being carried over here. I'm going to say that Alonso is going to win this race.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Love it.
Don't know if it's a drive shaft issue that's going to cause issues for Red Bull, but I think, everyone struggles. We've seen it already. We saw it obviously in qualifying, but methinks it'll translate to the actual Grand Prix. I'll take Alonso 1. I'll take Charles Leclerc finally getting a little bit of luck, and Ferrari hopefully getting their ducks in a row, P2, and then I'll put Max P3.
Wow. Jeez, for a second I was like, Red Bull are off the podium.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like, I was kind of going to lean similar ways there. I think Max wins, wire to wire, like you said, Mike. I think that's inevitable, but I think it will be Checo who slips up. And we'll see Fernando in that 2 spot, making up for, Saudi's woes. And P3, he's been a bit quiet, but I'm going to put Carlos Sainz on the podium in Australia.
Not a bad call at all.
I just don't think, I don't think Red Bull can do a 1, 2, 3 races in a row. Just there's too many factors in this sport. Something's going to happen. Or you're not, and it's a 1-2, and Red Bull is going to win mid-season. But I think that's what it'll be. Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, That's my podium. You can take that to the bank. $1,000 right now. Do it. All right, folks. We're going to be back with you in a couple weeks after the Australian Grand Prix. But you know what? This is an ever-changing podcast. We're going to have some guests at some point. We've got a lot of big plans. To everyone that's listening from the late breaker days, we promise you we're more organized this time. We know what we're doing, okay? But I've been producing podcasts for a bit longer now. We know what it takes, all right?
Yeah.
We're going to put in the work. We're going to put in the research like Mercedes didn't. And we're going to come out on the end. Sorry, Mike. I know he's Mercedes. He loves them.
Well, I don't care, man. Hey, we're just keeping it casual, right?
We're keeping it casual,
Yeah.
the F1 casual. It's going to be great. We're really excited. We got some big plans for some guests later in the season. Definitely over the summer break, we'll be doing some special episodes. And, you know, sometimes when it's 2 weeks between races, or there might be some on the calendar that's 3 weeks between, but I don't think so, other than the summer break. We'll throw in a couple spicy episodes, but definitely guests on the way. Also, if the person who is in control of the Canadian Grand Prix media passes is listening to this episode, we just reached out to you, and we're trying to get those passes for the Grand Prix in June. We know it's a long shot. We know you're not listening, but if you don't ask, you don't get. So let's get us to the Canadian Grand Prix. If not this year, definitely next year. Vegas is in November. You never know what happens. But until then, it's lights out.
We'll see you on the grid.
All right, before we get out of here, I'm back in the studio Sunday night. We recorded right after the race. So we thought it was done and dusted. Fernando takes his 15 seconds. He's P4, even though he celebrated, of course. But we've now learned the FIA has reversed that decision. No 10-second penalty. He's back on the podium. It's our boy, Fernando. That's insane. They're just playing mind games with the guy. It's ridiculous. The FIA is going to get their shit together. But you know what? Either way, we're happy. It's 100 podium finishes for Fernando. Congratulations. That's the end of the episode. We're going to see you in 2 weeks' time after the Australian Grand Prix. And listen, if you're on YouTube, you're watching this, hit that like button. Hit subscribe and hit that bell button so you know when these episodes are coming out. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe on there too. You give us that 5-star rating and maybe write a little review while you're at it. We'd really appreciate it. We want to get big. Like we said, we want to go to the Canadian GP and eventually all of them, right? Why not? All right. Thanks, folks. Until next time, it's lights out. We'll see you on the grid.